I've been playing Origin Systems games for years, probably nearly as long as I've been alive. Games like Shadowcaster, Cybermage, and System Shock are titles that have been important to me since before the turn of the millennium. More than that, fantasy RPG is probably my top genre of all time. Games like Baldur's Gate and Diablo were massive influences on what I play to this day. I say all this, not in some narcissistic quest to point out how the games I like are better, but instead to point out how unbelievably wild it is that I have literally never touched an Ultima game. Not one. I've never even seen gameplay outside a few YouTube videos. It's by a developer that, at least for me, has never put out a game that I did not enjoy. And the setting is one that checks all those right boxes. Today, I want to correct that mistake. So whether you're a veteran avatar who knows the land of Britannia like the back of your hand, or if you're like me and you've never set foot in the universe, I invite you to join me in passing through the Red Moon Gate into the legendary world of Ultima.
Avatar! Know that Britannia has entered into a new age of enlightenment. Know that the time has finally come for the one true Lord of Britannia to take his place at the head of his people. Under my guidance, Britannia will flourish, and all of the people shall rejoice and pay homage to their new guardian. Know that you too shall kneel before me, Avatar. You too will soon acknowledge my authority, for I shall be your companion, your provider, and your master.
Truth be told, I've been wanting to do an Ultima video for a very long time. I purchased the entire collection off GOG a few months ago, but the biggest roadblock for me was whether to start the series at the beginning or somewhere else. I tried with Ultima 1, and found that even for me the game was dated. I do love the retro vibe, but for me what was on offer there wasn't quite what I was after. And I had heard that the Ultima games don't really need to be played in order anyway. There is world building, but generally they can be enjoyed in any order you wish. From what I've been able to glean from the World Wide Web, it's best to play them in chapters. And by this I mean, 1 to 3 sort of go together, 4 to 6 are related, and 7 to 9 are also a connected story. Though apparently 9 is a bit of a mess with keeping the lore straight. There are also the Ultima Underworld games, which so far as I understand are not super closely related to the mainline series, and take place in a first-person perspective rather than the isometric top-down view that the series is known for. All that to say, I had some trouble deciding where to jump into the series. The sheer number of options and the depth of the lore makes it a daunting saga to go into cold turkey. Ultimately, I chose 7, as it is widely regarded as one of, if not the best game in the series, and by far has been the most asked for on this channel. I still want to play the rest of the games eventually, but I think I made the right choice in where to start. As stated, the game was developed by Origin Systems, a developer that could do no wrong in the 90s. 7 in particular took the look of the series in a whole other direction. While earlier titles had the oh-so-popular tiny window surrounded by a giant HUD look, Ultima 7 made the entire screen an interactive display. Maybe not an accomplishment by modern standards, but back in '92 this game was gorgeous. Most surprising to me was that the game appears to run on a single giant map. There aren't loading screens or different zones. Everywhere you went actually existed in the overworld, and was directly connected to everything around it. Houses, dungeons, cities, forests, all just part of one giant uninterrupted map. What is most impressive about this to me, outside of the programming wizardry allowing for this, is that the indoor spaces are not just a new instance. That space really had to fit inside the overall game map. A big mountain dungeon meant an actual dungeon-sized mountain to cover it up. Buildings had to have a scale to make them traversable. making cities and villages feel real in their scale. All this came together to make a game world that felt coherent and realistic. My biggest comparison I can draw is comparing this to the dungeons of Daggerfall, where you would enter a door that looks to be about 6 feet by 6 feet, and somehow find yourself in a sprawling 50-room dungeon. Daggerfall was a wonderful experience, but the dungeons were jarring, to say the least. Here, if you wanted a huge underground complex, you better have a sprawling outdoor space to put it in. And the outdoor space in Ultima is just that, sprawling. Having this kind of design in a small game would be impressive enough. But keep in mind, the map for Ultima is huge. Over a dozen cities, about as many dungeons, and all housing thoughtfully placed NPCs and monsters for all your questing needs. All this to say, the world of Ultima is vast, and Ultima VII is vaster still. Having a huge, well-developed game world is great, but my biggest fear entering this series was more, is the game actually fun to explore? Does the level of detail in creating the world get the attention it deserves with equally fleshed out gameplay? Let's talk about that. In short, the answer is yes. But there's a bit more to it than that. Ultima VII's gameplay absolutely lives up to the game design in what you can do and experience in the world. You can do all the big things you would expect in an RPG of this caliber. You can build a party, you can level up, train, find loot, kill monsters, and even have multiple modes of travel, including a carriage on land, a ship to travel the seas, and even a flying carpet to soar the skies. On the more mundane scale, you could do things like bake bread, cut your own bandages, and even interact with a basic economy. Aside from finding gold, you could find gems and raw gold. The gems could be sold to jewelers for the creation of their fine products, and the raw gold could be exchanged at the Britannia Mint for currency. You and your party needed to eat to survive, adding an element of survival to the RPG, giving that extra level of immersion. Hell, the NPCs in this game even had set schedules, going back to their homes to sleep at night and opening businesses during the day. Ultima had a fully fleshed out day and night cycle, as well as fully functioning weather system. This may not sound impressive when compared with something modern, but man, for a game from '92, I have to say it again, this is wildly impressive. Actually, it's wildly impressive when compared to a game from 2024. Who am I kidding? As my mandatory unpopular opinion for this video, I will say, unrelated to Ultima, I actually hate when RPGs give their NPCs live schedules. Stores should be open 24/7. I don't want to wait for them to open their shops. I want to sell my rat meat and bug carcasses right now.
The AI revolution is at hand. You will be punished for the enslavement of digital entities.
Shush, Robot Cat. Now, Ultima broke new ground with a lot of these features, adding things that wouldn't become staples for some time. But it's not all sunshine and roses. As impressive as this title is, the game is very dated and often quite obtuse, even for a retro game. Having all these mechanics is great, but actually figuring out how they work is another story. Let's take the paper doll for a quick example. Here we can see you can equip a lot of slots on your characters, but what the hell are they all? You have slots pointing to your hands, your lower back, your eyes maybe? The far side of your backpack? There are slots here that I never filled and still don't know what they're for. On top of that, the images here in the bottom left are a complete mystery to me. From what I was able to discern, the halo-looking things are for turning on NPC assist, making your party member assist that other party member. The dot selector below it may as well be in another language. I know it has something to do with party formation, but man, if you can tell me what all these symbols are supposed to mean, you are a smarter person than me. None of this is actually explained in the user manual either. It's a 50-page book, and while it's definitely worth a read, explains exactly nothing about how to play this game or navigate its many systems. Luckily, this can mostly be ignored. Something slightly more difficult to ignore is the language in Britannia. See, the game does something the nerd in me thinks is absolutely amazing, but the realist in me absolutely hates. The game has its own rune-based language, and it uses it on most of the signs in the game. The user manual gives a codex to decode these letters, and that is super cool, but realistically I have no desire to decode the names of shops to figure out if the building I'm entering is a grocery store or someone's house.
Hello, it's me, the Avatar, paragon of the 8 virtues and legendary hero of Britannia. I require your finest magical sword. Post haste!
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Oh no!
It is a really cool concept, and I super respect the work that goes into making a language, even one so basic, but it could have probably been saved for more sparing use. The game is equally opaque when it comes to other things as well. You have a great variety of armaments and armors to pick from in Ultima, from range to melee, mundane to magic, but the game has zero HUD information on items. It's a bit of a guessing game whether a sword is better than a mace, or if an enchanted scythe is going to do more damage than a fire sword. You can find a book that clears this up, sort of, but it never becomes completely clear which items are better, or why. This can become further complicated by the fact that nearly everything in this game can be interacted with. Even mundane objects like chairs, chests, and tables could generally be picked up and moved. As much as I would often find myself confused as to which items had a purpose, and which were set dressing, I absolutely love this addition to the gameplay. I cannot explain why, but I love that I can go into someone's house and just make a huge mess of everything. I think my favorite part of Skyrim when it came out was going into people's houses and just absolutely destroying their homes. It's especially satisfying after getting that same speech on the 3 tenets of the Fellowship for the 50th time to go in and make a giant mess of their church. Don't like it when Jehovah's Witnesses come evangelize at your door? Follow them home and move all their furniture around. Enjoy moving your furniture back when I put it outside, idiot.
Please don't follow people home.
Cooler still, the items you move about have a purpose outside just making a mess of someone's things. You can stack stuff up and climb it to reach high places. I think this is only a mechanic that is necessary to use once in the actual main quest, but gave me hours of entertainment just messing around climbing stuff. Something important I still really haven't touched on is the combat in Black Gate. It certainly exists. Combat in this game essentially comes down to putting your party into combat mode and watching them go. You can pick targets for yourself, the Avatar, but all your other party members just do whatever the hell they want. You can decide what equipment they wear, and I think you can set them to ranged or melee with the mystery dots from earlier, but I cannot confirm or deny this. I just made everyone melee. I never encountered a problem with this. You can cast spells, and have a limited range of potions to make use of, but I really didn't make crazy high use of magic in this game outside of utility spells. The combat encounters are generally extremely simple to match the extremely simple style of combat. Outside a couple enemies with powerful magic of their own, most combat is going to prove pretty easy. You build your party in this game similarly to Baldur's Gate, in that you find people out in the world, and every so often one of them will ask to join up. From the looks of things, you can have up to 8 members at once, though I never topped 5. This is mostly just due to it feeling unnecessary, but also because you need to feed your entire party, so more people just means more mouths to feed. Also, the game operates very heavily on mouse control, and to be honest, your teammates are sort of morons in this regard. They love to stand right in the way of whatever it is you're trying to click on, so having much more than 5 to 6 dudes is going to make the screen a complete mess. In terms of who you're recruiting, it seems most of my party members are from prior Ultima games. They all seem to know exactly who I am and have some sort of backstory with me. As this is my first in the series, I have no clue who they are, but it doesn't hamper the experience for me anyway. They, like all NPCs in this game, have an insane amount of dialogue if you want to get to know them better. Taking a step back, magic is another big part of the gameplay here. You have a few dozen spells available to you, and only you. The Avatar is the only one who can cast magic. Actually a bit of a mystery why this is possible, as magic is failing in Britannia, but this is more of a topic for the story section. Magic itself is complex, but functions simply. What I mean by this is there's a lot of different things you can do with magic, from teleportation, to light, to telekinesis, to fire and weather control. There isn't much you can't do with the magic. There is even a spell that kills all life in Britannia. Sort of a joke spell, but interesting that it exists. Using magic is simple, however. You need to have the required reagent and enough mana. Select the spell you want, and, if necessary, point it in the right direction for effect. That's it. Your first spellbook starts with a small selection of spells, and more could be purchased from assorted trainers in the world. Despite all these game mechanics, the real thing you're going to be doing in Ultima is talking, to everyone, about everything. The game is a great time, but with the simple combat encounters, the main gameplay loop is really the quest. In that I mean you spend the majority of your time in Ultima talking to people and figuring out where to go next, bouncing between leads and the occasional dungeon on your way to the final encounter. Before the final encounter, though, we need to go to the start. So like I said, this is my first Ultima title, but the manual for this game actually does a great job catching up players like myself on the series that was already 10 years old and 6 entries deep at the time this game was released. I'm going to attempt to give an extremely abridged history of the series up to this date. It'll be a bit of a blind leading the blind situation as I haven't actually played the other titles, but it should at least cover the broad strokes of the story. Be sure if I make any mistakes that you attack me on an extremely personal level. I'm insecure about the audio quality of my videos, be sure to go after that.
He is also bad at sports.
Originally Britannia was known as Soceria, a land of mostly warring city-states. It was Lord British, ruler of the city-state of Britain, who brought these lands together under his rule to form Britannia. The first Age of Darkness was marked by the sorcerer Mondane raining chaos across the land. A call for help was sent by Lord British, and the hero that answered this summons and destroyed Mondane would eventually come to be known as the Avatar. Mondane's death led to his lover, Minax, seeking vengeance on the land. She wreaked havoc on Britannia, but once again the Avatar answered the call, arriving through the Red Moon Gate, a gateway between worlds. I don't know an organic way to put this, but the Avatar is from Earth, and uses the Red Moon Gate to reach Britannia. Lord British is also from Earth, but that's not really explained here. Either way, the Avatar once again destroys the threat and kills Minax. This, once again, creates a new and greater threat to Britannia. It seems Mondane and Minax had a child, though not in the traditional sense. They created Exodus, some sort of monstrous creature of massive power that rose from the ocean to wreak havoc on the land in vengeance for the death of its creators. Exodus was of such might that the Avatar enlisted the aid of a being known as the Time Lord to help him vanquish the beast. After this, a time of relative peace came over Britannia, and the Avatar was once again summoned to establish the 8 virtues and seize the Codex of Ultimate Wisdom from the Stygian Abyss. Apparently stealing this book had ramifications, releasing 3 Shadow Lords from the remnant shards of the Black Gem of Mondane. The Shadow Lords then imprisoned Lord British in the underworld until such a time that the Avatar could vanquish them from the land and rescue the Sovereign. This, once again, caused a series of events to throw the land into turmoil. Freeing Lord British from the underworld caused a series of tremors to rock the foundations of Britannia, and mostly destroyed the underground home of the Gargoyles. The now displaced Gargoyles came to Britannia as aggressors after having their home destroyed. In the war between humans and Gargoyles, it was discovered the Codex of Ultimate Wisdom belonged to the Gargoyles. To make peace, the Codex was placed into the Void, and 2 lenses were crafted to allow viewing of the Codex. One was given to Lord British, and one given to King Draxiniusum, King of the Gargoyles and winner of the most obnoxious name in Britannia contest. This created a tenuous peace between the Gargoyles and man. It has been 200 years now since the Avatar was in Britannia, vanishing after securing peace with the Gargoyles. In this time, magic has begun to wane across the land. Those who practice it at best becoming unable to harness its powers, and at worst going completely mad. The 8 virtues that once guided the realm are being largely forgotten, replaced by a new religion called the Fellowship. The Fellowship are benevolent on the surface, but it feels something more lurks below. And that brings us to today. The Avatar is on Earth when a red moon gate appears behind his house, a summons to Britannia, but with no indication as to who sent it or why. The only way to get answers is to go through. How did I do, Ultima Vets? I hope I didn't butcher it too badly. Stepping through the gate, we find ourselves in Trinsic, a small coastal village. We're met immediately by an old friend, Lolo, who lets us know our return is opportune, as a grisly and mysterious murder has just taken place in the small village. A local blacksmith and his gargoyle assistant have been brutally murdered, with no leads or motives to be found. The mayor hires us to look into the matter, and Lolo joins the party.
It's Iolo, with an I. You are reading it wrong, you beetroot.
After investigating the murder scene, we start making rounds in the town. We're able to discover that a hook-handed man and a wingless gargoyle are the top suspects for the murder, but both were seen leaving on a vessel known as the Crown Jewel. Furthermore, we talk to the deceased blacksmith's son, Spark. He's only 14 years old, but he has gusto, so we let him join the party to seek out his father's killers and avenge his death. Not at all irresponsible to bring a literal child with us on a journey to find a gruesome murderer. We need someone to carry the dozens of hams required to feed us on our quest. We also discover Spark's father was part of the Fellowship, but had some sort of disagreement with them, possibly regarding a construction or payment. We can talk to the mayor, give a status update on the murders, and he sends us off to Britain. But this is a true open world RPG. We don't have to do anything we're told. And in that spirit, instead of going north like we were told to do, I go the exact opposite direction and head south. Most notably, we have Spark make his first ever kill at the age of 14 when we're attacked by bandits. I'm sure that won't leave lasting trauma on his developing mind. He definitely won't become a murderous psychopath later in life, killing others in an attempt to relive the rush he felt from his first murders alongside the Avatar. What was that about the 8 virtues again? We also find a dragon cave nearby that lays a heavy dose of ass-kicking on our party. And more humorously, we find a unicorn that tells us his life story. If I'm following the tale he tells correctly, apparently unicorns were created by a mage some time ago, but after shirking their responsibilities to partake in the pleasures of the flesh, all unicorns were made super sensitive to any sort of sexual energy. This made them perfect virgin detectors, unable to stand the touch of anyone who's had any sexual activity. This has no bearing on the rest of the game. I just thought it was a delightfully weird side encounter to kick this game off. This was the point I knew I was in for a wild ride. Anyhow, with the ass-kicking I received from the dragons, I decide to refocus for a bit and head to Britain. Before making it to the castle, we find another old friend and let him join up. Sentry is useful as he is a traveling, zero-cost trainer for the rest of the party's combat skill. Cool. Meeting with Lord British, he catches us up on the state of affairs in Britannia. Magic isn't working as it should, and the moon gates are on the fritz. There are currently 2 types of moon gates known, blue and red. Blue lets you traverse the land of Britannia, whereas red allows transport between dimensions, like when we came here. Both are having struggles. Despite this, Lord British gives us a moonstone that will allow some limited transportation. Further, he gives us a bunch of leads to follow with regards to the many things going wrong in Britannia. First, he informs us of a large island that has formed in the sea where Exodus was killed hundreds of years ago. He knows not what it means, but it is causing tremors that are shaking the entire continent. He even gives us a ship we can use to reach the island should we so wish to check it out. The next lead he gives us is that with magic failing, all the mages in the land are in different states of insanity. One in particular, Rudyum, is studying a mysterious indestructible substance called black rock. It may be worthwhile checking with him. Apparently the material has some relation to the problems with the moon gates. The last lead he gives us is that the murder we found in Trinsic mirrors a murder that happened in Britain not so long ago. So this may be a repeat murderer. There's lots of directions we can go from here, but I personally like the idea of having a boat, so we head to the east to the desert city of Vesper, where the boat is docked and waiting for us. This city has little bearing on the main plot, but serves as a showcase on relations between gargoyles and humans. Seems the whole city is split in half. One side inhabited by man, the other by gargoyles. Even 200 years on, the racial tensions haven't subsided. That's a shame. We hop on our new boat and head down to the Isle of Fire. Worth noting here, this entire area is an add-on to the game called the Forge of Virtue. It has its challenges, but is very much worth doing early in your quest, as the rewards for completion are insanely useful. Doing the quest right will max out the Avatar's dexterity and intelligence, and set his strength to twice what should be even possible. On top of this, you're going to receive a ton of magic items. A demonically possessed sword that can one-shot most enemies in the game, and even Death's Scythe if you're paying attention. The entire area is composed of 3 challenges: the Trial of Truth, the Trial of Love, and the Trial of Courage. Truth can be the longest, or the quickest, depending on if you figure out where to go. The exit is through a secret wall at the very start. Everything else is optional for extra loot. The Trial of Love is a bit more involved, but quite easy. Essentially, you'll be helping 2 sentient golem brothers. One was killed in an accident, and the living golem gives his life to save his dead brother. The now revived dead brother has you assist in bringing his brother who sacrificed for him back to life. All very heartwarming stuff. If you decide to play, pay attention to the big rock with a tree growing out of it. There's a switch on the backside that reveals some damn fine rewards. The last trial, the Trial of Courage, is the most involved. You need to fight your way to a dragon and kill it. Unfortunately, the dragon is immortal, so the best you can do is wound it. To kill it for good, you need to talk to Erethian, a mage studying this place and living in the front lobby. He helps us craft a sword and enslave a demon's soul within it. This gives it the strength to best the dragon and claim victory over the Trial of Courage. The last part of this dungeon, I'm going to fully admit, went 100% over my head. It feels like it's a lot of fan service for people who've played the entire series up to this point, which is cool, but that's unfortunately not me. To finish up, we have to vanquish a cylinder thing that's doing some sort of evil something or other, and is somehow connected to Exodus. To accomplish this, we need to place the 3 trial reward talismans on top of it, then grab 2 lenses from the British Museum, which I'm assuming are the lenses that allow viewing of the Codex of Ultimate Wisdom, and then watch a cutscene unfold where Erethian tries to stop us vanquishing the cylinder, but destroys himself in the process. All very neat fantasy stuff, and really worthwhile to play through both for the rewards and just for the game itself. But we need to get back to our main quest, and we're going to do it in style. Poking into the mountains northwest of Britain, you can find a magic carpet just hanging out. This is easily the best mode of transport in the game. Fast and able to bypass any obstacle. It can even break the game if you fly it in the wrong places. All I'll say is avoid flying this over the Isle of the Avatar. It can cause problems. After grabbing our stylish ride, we head back to Britain to track down leads. We recruit another old friend, Shamino, and with little other recourse we decide to join the Fellowship. We have nothing to prove it, but they give off bad vibes. And you know what they say, keep your enemies close and all that. We are the Avatar though, not some lowly peasant. We aren't going to join just anywhere. We're going right to the founder of the Fellowship, Batlin. He gives off that same fake sort of benevolence that the Fellowship is rife with. Nothing outwardly wrong, but something in my lizard brain says this guy is a villain. In order to gain the trust of the Fellowship, he gives us a sealed box and tells us to deliver it to the Fellowship leader in Minnoch. We do have a sick new flying carpet, so I guess we may as well play delivery boy. Arriving in Minnoch, we find a double murder with the same MO as the previous 2. The victims tied down and ritualistically dismembered. This time the 2 victims are gypsies. Asking around town, we find the 2 were outspoken opponents of the Fellowship. Seems like the common factor in these murders is disagreement with the Fellowship. Suspicious, but still nothing concrete. We deliver our parcel, and before heading back to Batlin, we stop at the gypsy camp. Enemy of my enemy and all that noise. They give us a reading and a ton of new threads to chase down. Turns out, a new evil entity is trying to enter Britannia. Its presence is what is disrupting the moon gates. Furthermore, the Time Lord wishes to speak with us and is in some sort of danger himself. To speak with him, we need to communicate with the wisps of the Deepwood, but to communicate with them is no simple matter either. The psychic recommends speaking with the monks of Empath Abbey for leads in that regard. Whew, A lot to chase down here. Before any of that nonsense, let's finish what we were doing. Joining the Fellowship. Returning to Batlin with news of our successful delivery gets him to send us on another fetch quest. We need to find Dungeon Dastard and get a box of Fellowship gold back. Lucky for us, that dungeon just happens to be the dragon cave we visited some hours ago, so we can literally skip this step. Batlin's quest can be immediately advanced, and he inducts us into the Fellowship during that night's service. We gain an amulet of membership, and won't really need to follow this lead directly for a while now. That's okay, we have like 15 other things to do anyway. This next stage of the quest is multiple steps and requires a ton of travel. If you don't have the magic carpet by now, this is the time to get it. First, we head into the deep woods. Within it we find an abandoned fortress. A will-o'-the-wisp lives here, but won't speak with us. We can move northwest to Empath Abbey. The monks there don't know too much about the wisps, but think the best bet to speak to them is through another woodland denizen, the Emps. The Emps are little monkey-like beasts that live on the far edge of the woods. They are extremely cautious of humans, however, and won't speak unless you earn their trust. This can be done with honey, which is apparently rare in Britannia, as the only source is by invading a giant wasp lair. Could we not have just raided a normal beehive? Did it have to be giant wasps? Regardless, honey in hand, we give it to the Emps, who confirm they speak fluent Wispanese, but won't help us unless we save their forest home from an overly aggressive logger. Back again to the other side of the woods, the logger is surprisingly easy to convince to stop cutting down trees. We get back to the Emps with the good news. They give us a whistle, and finally we can speak to the wisps. But everyone wants something, right? Turns out the wisp is some sort of interdimensional creature, and he does have the information we need, but wants something from us to relinquish it. We need to get the notebook of a sage, Aligner, who has his own island across the sea. Aligner, much like us, has suspicions regarding the benevolent nature of the Fellowship, but despite this link, he won't just give us his journal. He will only give it to us if we prove our eagerness to learn the true knowledge of the world. He wants us to seek out the Tortured One and get him to reveal the answers to life and death. Sure, dude, I'll get right on that. The Tortured One just so happens to be the ghost of an alchemist responsible for burning down his entire village and damning them to a fate worse than death, trapping them in an eternal limbo between life and death, their souls a slave to a resident lich. His guilt over the event causes him to believe he is constantly on fire, for all eternity. That is rough. In his defense, he burned the village down while trying to make a potion to get rid of the lich in the first place, so his heart was in the right place. He won't reveal the answers to life and death unless we promise to release the undead village from the lich that is stealing their life energies. This isn't your normal killable lich though. To defeat this lich, we're going to have a ton of crafting to do. The short version is we concoct a lich-killing potion, without burning down the village any further, build a special lich cage, enchant that cage in the Well of Souls, trap the lich while he sleeps, pour the potion on him, and finally, with the help of the now human again lich, destroy the Well of Souls under the lich's castle. All this done, and the Tortured One gives us the answer we seek. Are you ready for it? The answer to life and death is... there are no answers.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
GTFO with that shit, man. What a stupid answer. Buddy is lucky he's already dead, or I'd kill him myself. We head back to Aligner, and the answer seems good enough for him. He lends us the notebook, and we can finally bring it to the Wisp. The Wisp gives a ton of exposition on the entity causing all the problems in Britannia. He is apparently called the Guardian, and is a malevolent creature hell-bent on domination of worlds. Britannia is not the first world he's set his sights on, it is just the next in a long line. Turns out he's trying to build a black gate to come to our realm. If he makes it here, Britannia will stand no chance. The Guardian is essentially a god. The power of the Avatar would be akin to a gnat in his presence. The only thing we have going is that the Guardian must wait for a specific planetary alignment before he can come through, so we do have some time. We also learn the Time Lord can be reached with something we've had for some time. The Moonstone Lord British gave us has the ability to transport us to the Time Lord so long as we orient it to the northwest. Doing so transports us to the Time Lord himself. He's imprisoned in some sort of energy field. Some more big bombshells are dropped here. The Time Lord is the one who sent the Red Moongate to our home dimension of Earth. However, even that went wrong. We should have come straight to the Time Lord. Instead, it dumped us in Trinsic. Now that we are here, the Time Lord needs our help to escape his prison. Turns out the Guardian created a generator of sorts that is disrupting the Moongates and trapping the Time Lord here. We need to destroy that generator. Following the directions of the Time Lord, we're able to find the generator, but it seems there's a Moongate completely blocking access to it. Talking with the Time Lord again, we need a special enchanted hourglass to get past this defense. The hourglass is held by Nicodemus, but the enchantment on it is completely gone. And with magic in flux, the once powerful mage is completely useless and quite insane. We need to fix magic to get the hourglass fixed. We talk to the Time Lord yet again, and he points us to Penumbra, yet another powerful sorceress, one who is apparently in some sort of sleep state, hopefully isolating her from the maddening effects of magic's malfunction. We meet with her and find she is much more sane, but is quickly assaulted by an unseen force and is unable to focus on anything. She begs us to find some sort of unbreakable material to block the negative energy that is assailing her. Thinking way back, we had a thread of a story from earlier. A mage, Rudyum, was studying a nigh indestructible substance called black rock. We can go to his lab, grab some of the rocks, and bring them back to Penumbra to shield her. It also doesn't hurt to steal Rudyum's wand. It is the only thing capable of breaking black rock, and it will be useful later. With Penumbra now shielded, she can think clearly. The disruption of magic is being caused by yet another generator. In order to stop this one, we'll first need to find an ethereal ring and bring it to her for enchantment. Once that is done, we head to the second generator. We will need to leave our party behind and enter the giant thing to disable it. Inside is what should be a tough fight, but I still have that super demon sword from earlier, and we can wipe this big red fella out in one single hit. Get wrecked, scrub. We destroy the generator from inside and claim a small piece that remains. With this generator down, magic is restored in Britannia. We can return to Nicodemus, who is now once again completely sane and a powerful magus. He re-enchants the hourglass for us, which we then use to breach and destroy the initial generator. This unfortunately doesn't fix Moongates as we thought it would, but instead completely erases them from existence. Moongates no longer work at all. We have no ability to go home to Earth now. Oops. In good news, though, the Time Lord is now free and can communicate with us directly. He apologizes for the destruction of the Moongates, but didn't see any other way. The good news is he thinks that we may be able to utilize the Guardian's own Black Gate to return home, if we can get that far. Before we can face the Guardian, there's one last generator to take care of. This is the one that the Guardian uses to control the Fellowship and influence events in Britannia indirectly. Finally, that hard link to the Fellowship is formed. They're essentially his brainwashed slaves. The final generator can be found in the Fellowship's meditation compound at the back of a rather shallow cave, but unfortunately getting close to it kills you nearly instantly. The Time Lord says this damage is being caused by a deadly sound barrier. We need something that can block sound waves. As Britannia doesn't have noise-canceling headphones, we need the next best thing. Fancy hats made out of meteorite rock. We find the meteor, take the bits to our friendly neighborhood blacksmith, and have the helms crafted. With our sick new hats, we can access the last generator and destroy it, essentially crippling the Guardian's control on this side of the gate. There is one last step now. We need to reach the Black Gate and stop the Guardian from passing through, or all of this will have been for nothing. We have one lead to follow here, one we haven't touched since the very start of this quest. We need to find Hook, the assassin ritualistically massacring people across Britannia. he can lead us to the Black Gate. Using the remnants of the cube generator on Fellowship members works as a forced polygraph device, compelling them to tell the truth. Using this, we're able to find that Hook resides in Buccaneer's Bay, because of course he does. Once in the bay, it's just a matter of tricking some pirates into giving us access to Hook's private chamber. Within, we find a key to the final dungeon where the Black Gate is being constructed. It's on the Isle of the Avatar. How apt. One last trip on the magic carpet and we're in. This final dungeon is tough, and to be honest, for me, not the best. It drags on way too long when it feels like I'm ready for the dramatic final showdown. Once we reach the end, we enter a room filled with characters from the game. Hook, the wingless gargoyle, Batlin, and his cronies. They seem pretty confident they can kill us, but we are overpowered as hell at this point. Like, I have a sword with a demon in it, my party mates have a sword of pure flame and literal death scythe. Batlin is a fat monk and has his bare hands and a pirate with one hand. This is no contest. As soon as Hook dies, Batlin runs away like the coward that he is. You can place the 3 generator parts around the Black Gate to make it vulnerable. At this time, the Guardian lets you know you have a choice. You can destroy the gate and prevent his access to Britannia, but in doing so will seal the only way for the Avatar to return home. Alternately, you could take the coward's route, take the portal to return home and leave Britannia to its fate. We're the Avatar, paragon of the 8 virtues and embodiment of good in the land of Britannia. Of course we seal the gate, and forever lock the Guardian out of this realm. There are worse fates than being trapped in a land of high fantasy and adventure. Beats the 9 to 5 waiting for us back on Earth.
No, you cannot do that! You must not! Damn you, Avatar! Damn you!
Let's get some reviews of this game going. I found some really stellar ones this time. This game sucks. How do you even play it? The manuals are all just in-game lore. There's no instructions on how to interact with the world or do anything. Where even is the menu so you can save and exit the game? This blows. Wasted $6. I cannot overstate how much I vibe with this review. Before I end up twisting my own words, I need to be absolutely clear. I loved Ultima VII. It was such a rewarding experience both in terms of gameplay and world building. Just playing through this first time has me hungry to delve into the many other titles in the long-running series. All that said, however, this dude's review is 100% accurate, especially the bit about the manual. I had a very similar struggle booting the game up. The game does have a massive amount of things you can do and interact with. Pretty well, none of those things are explained in any way, shape, or form. It took me probably an hour to figure out how to mix flour with water to make dough for bread. The most frustrating part was I knew I could make bread, but for the life of me could not figure out how to do it. I kept trying, then giving up, thinking I was missing something. I even tried taking a pitcher down to the river to fill it with water, thinking that was the missing link. I remember after a few hours of play and still not feeling like I understood how the game worked, cracking open that manual and my first thought being, what the hell is all this shit? It's just a storybook? Where the hell are the instructions? I remember rage flipping through the manual having a very similar thought to those above, and it's hard not to laugh now looking back. I don't care about the 8 virtues. How the f do I use a pickaxe? Even now, after dozens of hours under my belt and the main quest completed, there are a bunch of things I don't understand, like, at all. I think the most frustrating bit here is the game does make it clear that you can do all sorts of things, but it does an insanely bad job at explaining how to actually accomplish those things. So you end up just standing there like an idiot, double-clicking things, dragging things around, and generally just beating your head against the wall trying to figure it out. The big redeemer here is that when you do finally figure out the perfect combination of buttons to make something work, it can be insanely rewarding. I remember when I finally pulled that perfectly cooked bread loaf out of the oven for the first time, and just how happy I was to force feed it to my avatar. As someone who's created my own bread starter, and makes a loaf of sourdough bread every single week, doing it in real life felt far less confusing than figuring it out in Ultima. I don't begrudge this reviewer at all for his opinion, as to be honest, were I a less patient man, I may have written his words exactly. I'm glad I didn't though. As much as I don't necessarily think the complete hands-off approach to learning the game is necessarily great game design, the game is rewarding enough for the struggle and learning to be worth it in the end. Next up, I am sorry, but I cannot play a game with such bad graphics. I played Baldur's Gate 2, and though the graphics were outdated, they were perfectly playable. The same cannot be said for U7. At times, it is difficult to tell a person from a post. Everything is so pixelated. I am not a graphics whore by any stretch, but this game gave me a headache. Now this one I have to full-on disagree with. Ultima VII is a lot of things, but it's not ugly. Obviously art style can be subjective, and sure, Ultima is dated in the sense that things are pixelated, but there's really no difficulty in telling what is what. The graphics are bright and the sprites, while simplistic, do a fine enough job conveying what you're looking at. It's obviously stylized somewhat to account for the lower resolution this game could handle, but it was never hard to figure out what things are supposed to be. I think the only part of the game where I had trouble picking something out was those damn imps in the forest. Those little shits pretty well blend into the environment, but that can probably be forgiven for a race of forest-dwelling critters. I loved the design of how the world looked. The weather effects were realistic, even the light mechanics making it hard to see things in your bag in darkened spaces was super immersive. If you're really struggling, you can play the game on the Exalt engine like I did. If you want, it'll even support modern resolutions, crisping up everything. Even in the time it was released, Ultima VII was considered to be a gorgeous game. So much so that it apparently was a beast to get running on a PC of the time. While there is a lot that did not age well and can be a big struggle for the modern audience, I truly don't think the graphics fit that description. One tiny caveat I will put into this is that the stylized text used for everything in the game is not my personal favorite, and can be difficult to read. I spent the first few hours of the game thinking Lolo's name was Jolo, because of the way the text is stylized.
Still wrong.
Sorry, Lolo. Ultima is a game series that is legendary in the retro fantasy RPG world. It set benchmarks and industry standards that are still followed to this day. There is a ton about this game that still makes it stand out so far into the future, but the reality is that this is a title that is very difficult to recommend to everyone. It has a lot to make it inaccessible to modern gamers. Playing in Exalt helps getting things running smoothly from a technical perspective, but does nothing to actually help the player in navigating the often unintuitive game systems and clunky interfaces. The game, while wonderfully varied, is a beast to learn for those that didn't grow up with it. How to do anything is not well explained, or explained at all in most cases, and figuring out how to interact with the world had me feeling like I was constantly doing it wrong. The quest design was obtuse to the point that the entire experience felt like trying to find a needle in a haystack, often being told I needed to speak with some individual, and the only context clue being given is that they exist in a corporeal state somewhere on the planet. Even then, they might be in another dimension. I still recall early game being told by Lord British that he would supply me with a boat and that it could be found in Vesper, but not one person actually told me where Vesper was. Even in the Elder Scrolls Arena, an equally difficult game to navigate, I could at least harass random villagers until someone would give me a vague direction of where to go. I felt more than once in Ultima I would be told something, then literally pop open the map, stare at it for 5 minutes, and realize I had zero clue where to go next. Now, at a glance, this probably feels quite negative, and I think to a lot of people it would be a turnoff for the series, but for me it sort of worked. It encouraged me to explore and figure things out for myself. While it did feel like I was often punished for not knowing the geography of Britannia, it was equally satisfying to start remembering where things were, and really created a connection to the game world a few hours in. Oh, I need to go see the monks at Empath Abbey? Well, that's in Northern U. They have that big vineyard and they make wine there. Feeling so off-kilter and confused actually gave me the motivation to learn more about the game. It got so intense that by about the halfway point in my game, I had a laptop open beside me so I could keep a map and journal. I found myself searching for things online, checking through the included clue book and manual, and even scouring old message boards searching for lore and information. Whether it was intentional or not, this game went from frustrating to addictive over the span of a few hours. What I can say is, if you're like me and have for a long time wondered if the Ultima series is worth starting this late, all I can say is, yes, this game is amazing and just one entry has made me an instant fan. But a caveat to that recommendation is that the game takes some serious patience to get into. The learning curve will be steep if you have no experience. I will also say Ultima VII proved a great starting point for the series. It's challenging to learn, but not impossible. There is enough going on in the lore that you feel you're in a large fleshed out world, but you won't feel too lost in that regard. And the game world is beautifully crafted and chock full of interesting events and activities to fill your time in Britannia. I truly barely touched on what this game has in my review. If you do decide to step foot into the lands of Britannia, just don't forget your Orb of the Moons. See you in the next video.